I was working a late night shift at the diner I worked at for a year. It was a rainy night. In fact, it was pouring. Nights like these usually meant less customers because people aren't exactly rushing to drive in the rain. I was expecting a slow night. It was for the most part. I was working until midnight. At some point closer to the end of my shift, in came a man and a woman significantly younger looking than him. He looked about 40. She looked like she were in her 20s. They both looked at me the second they walked in, and so I went over to greet them and ask how many. They said just 2, so I brought them to a table. They took a while to order, and I noticed they were talking really quietly to each other. After they did order, the man started striking up a conversation with me. I'm a generally talkative person, which was why I've always thrived in the hospitality industry. So I started chatting their ears off since it was a slow night anyway. Typical waitress-customer back and forth. The girl oddly didn't say much. The man did most of the talking, so I started directing my questions more to him. I can't remember every last thing we said to each other, obviously, but one thing that stuck in my head was when the man asked me, "Do you live alone?" I did live alone, and still do live alone. I answered his question honestly, saying I live about 10 minutes north up the road, and that it's really quiet and boring around here. At the time, I didn't see his question as any kind of red flag, albeit maybe a bit strange of a question. But something about a man being with another female makes you automatically assume they're not a threat. I made jokes about being stuck here forever and such, and then walked away from the table. I'd say about 45 minutes later, they finished and left. Fast forward probably an hour later, and we were closing up the place. I said goodbye to my coworkers and rushed to my car to avoid getting more soaked than I needed to from the rain. It was still pouring outside. I drove home slow because of the conditions. The second I got home, I ran straight to the front door and let myself in. I didn't even notice that neither of the other tenants' cars were parked outside. My living situation was the middle floor of a home with 3 apartments in it. There's a side entrance with a stairway that has an entrance to all 3 floors. My being on the first floor meant that I could enter through the front door. After setting my keys and stuff down on the kitchen counter, there was a manic pounding at the front door.